The New York Rangers are red hot, and they've been playing well since the trade for Vladimir Tarasenko. John Chik of Locked On New York Rangers joins us to talk about the Rangers, whether they'll make another move at the trade deadline, and their prospects as we head down the stretch.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On New York Rangers, John Chik. And John, I'll tell you, it's been a very, very exciting couple of weeks for the Rangers. Their point streak continues with a nice little comeback to force overtime last night in Calgary. You had the Vladimir Tarasenko trade. Let's start with that. It's 5 games in now. How has Vladimir Tarasenko fit in with the New York Rangers?
Yeah, so far so good. I mean, they've mostly had him, on the top line. They started initially by super stacking that top line, going Panarin and then Mika and then Tarasenko from left to right. They quickly made an adjustment, moved Kreider back up there, moved Panarin down. But Tarasenko, both from an on-ice standpoint and also just watching him interact with his teammates, it looks like so far so good. He's fitting right in. I don't know if you had a chance to catch the first game of the Tarasenko era, Gil, but he actually scored a goal on his second shift. Panarin with a nice feed and Tarasenko with a little tip-in goal, and then also got one in the game against Calgary last night. Of course, the Rangers were down 2-0 into that game, and came back and tied it, forced it into overtime. They lost, but they at least got a point there. But yeah, so far so good. I mean, I think it's something that the Rangers really needed. Going into the trade deadline, I've done a couple of trade-centric episodes, and I did one episode where what I'll do sometimes is I'll look at 3 different candidates that the Rangers could trade for. And I'd covered Tarasenko in the past. And one of the biggest reasons for me is just positional need. Because before the Rangers traded for Tarasenko, you look at their depth chart, top to bottom, left to right, backwards, forwards, everything. It's pretty clear that the biggest weakness, at least for me, is right wing. And I even made the point at the time, if the Rangers bring in 2 players, before the deadline, you could make the case that both should be right wingers. I mean, that's kind of the discrepancy you get between right wing and all the other positions. And they got their guy. Vladimir Tarasenko is a big time right winger in this league, former Stanley Cup champion, somebody that can go out there and play with anybody, and a playoff performer as well, and a sniper. That's something that they need as well. There's a lot of pass first guys on this Ranger team, which is nice, but I've talked about this on my show. There's times you almost wish they would be just a little bit more selfish. And Tarasenko's, he's not going to hesitate to shoot the puck, that's for sure. And I'm glad we got him. I thought that was an excellent trade for the Rangers.
Talk to me about the ripple effect that Tarasenko's addition to the lineup has on this overall team.
Yeah, I mean, I think it first and foremost just kind of makes the entire team a little bit deeper. I mentioned the right wing situation a second ago. Besides Kakko, I mean, there's not really anyone you can go to. Kravtsov has struggled, and he wants to be traded again. And, there's times this season where guys like Barclay Goodrow and Jimmy Vesey have played the right wing in the top 6. And that's all well and good. They're capable players, but I don't see either one of them as like bona fide, true, top 6 right wing type players. And, a lot of times what the Rangers have been doing is they've been keeping the kid line together, Lafreniere, Hedl, and Kakko. And usually when that line is together, that's the third line. And so then, you've got those 2 holes as far as your top 6 at right wing is concerned. And Vladimir Tarasenko obviously fills one of those spots. And so far, so good. He's done a great job. And like I said, just really lengthens the lineup. And I'm curious to see if there are any other moves before the trade deadline. I don't think it'll be quite as splashy of a pickup as Tarasenko, but I get the feeling maybe a depth forward could be on the way for the Rangers.
The Rangers go 3-0-1 on their road trip, beating Carolina, beating Edmonton. Talk to me about that dramatic comeback win against Edmonton, because that was one of the most exciting games I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, they basically flipped the script on the Oilers from earlier this season, because what I would say was probably the worst loss of the Rangers season is there was a game in Madison Square Garden, And Rangers were up 3-0 going into the third period. Everything's cool. They're cruising along. They look like they're going to get 2 points. They get 4 goals in the third period and they lose. And they kind of paid them back for that in this one because they were down 3-0. They were down 4-1, and they came back and got it done. But just a really nice character win. And I said this in an episode that I'm going to be posting a little bit later today here on Sunday. I didn't feel like, even though they were down 4-1 at the end of the first, I didn't feel like all hope was lost in that game because a lot of the Oiler goals were a case of the Rangers kind of shooting themselves in the foot just a little bit. A couple of soft goals that Igor let in and a couple instances where they just didn't clear the front of the net. And, Edmonton, not the best defensive team. The Rangers have some star players that are hot. So I just felt like they could get back into it. And it was great because between periods there, the first and second period, Gallant goes in there and he tells his players down 4-1, he goes, "We're not losing this game." So I thought that's awesome. And you just love to hear stories like that, coming out of the locker room and him just kind of galvanizing the team. And another thing that kind of went under the radar there, his decision to not pull Igor Shesterkin, despite Igor being up against it a little bit recently, at least by his own lofty standards. And, obviously struggling in that game, giving up 4 goals in the first period. And from then on, he doesn't give up anything. And even in the shootout, Edmonton went just 1 for 6 because it went 6 rounds. So, just great stuff all around, man. Just a character win and one of those victories that makes it fun to be a fan of the New York Rangers for sure.
Talk to me a little bit more about Shesterkin. The numbers aren't at the elite level that they were a year ago. How much of that is on him? How much of it is on the way the team is playing defense in front of him?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, like in a lot of situations like this, it's a little bit from column A and a little bit from column B, right? But overall, I think he's going to be fine. He went through a little bit of a skid early in the season when pretty much the entire team was slumping. He got it together and played some excellent hockey not too long after that. And again, a little bit of a downturn recently, but somebody and I forget who this was, but somebody on one of my YouTube videos left the comment like, I'd rather Igor go through a little bit of a slump in February than, in April or, any time in the playoffs, basically. So I'm kind of that same mindset. And I think it's just kind of a reminder that he's human. No matter who you are as a goalie in this league, you're going to go through a funk sooner or later. I mean, it happens to the greatest goalies that have ever played this game. I think that's what we're seeing with Igor right now. And like I said, even that game against Edmonton, the last 2 periods, the overtime, the shootout, just seeing that and, seeing him make a couple nice saves against McDavid, that's all I needed to see. I get the feeling that the next time we see him, he's going to be right back to the Igor Shesterkin that Ranger fans are all very accustomed to watching play between the pipes for this team.
Last question for you. You mentioned the possibility of picking up another depth forward at the trade deadline. Any particular targets you have in mind, and who might they give up, or what might they give up in exchange?
Yeah, I did an episode on this not too long ago. And as far as what the Rangers would give up, I mean, it depends on who you're bringing back. But if you bring in a bottom 6 type forward, a 4th line type forward, which I think is what the Rangers will do, then I think you should probably be able to pull that off for maybe like a 3rd round draft pick. I mean, it depends who it is and, how much interest there is in that player, how much they have to outbid other teams that are interested. But I actually did an episode, last week. At the top of my list is the same guy they traded for last season, and that would be Tyler Mott. I thought he did an excellent job for this Ranger team. He only played 9 regular season games before he got hurt. Came back for Game 6 against the Penguins in the playoffs and really made an impact. I mean, he's a buzzsaw. He's just a complete pain in the butt to play against. He's just in your face the entire time. He hits, just plays his heart out, man. And he doesn't score that often, but you always feel like he's kind of close, if that makes sense. Like, it always feels like he's like this close to scoring like a really important goal for your team. So Tyler Mott is at the top of my list, but I'll also do an honorable mention to the 2 players that I discussed in that episode, which would also be Nick Ritchie, big bodied player. I think he'd be a good fit on the 4th line. And Max Domi could give you some secondary scoring as well. So I'll throw those 2 out there as well.
All right, John, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yeah, so I mean, the podcast, you can find that anywhere you're watching or listening to Locked On NHL here. We're on that same audio platform. We're on YouTube, pretty much any audio platform. And you can find me on Twitter at jchik17. And the podcast is also on Twitter at LO_NY_Rangers. So definitely come give us a watch, give us a listen, give us a follow, do whatever you got to do. And yeah, good times.
All right, John Chik, always a pleasure to have you here. Thanks for joining us today.
All right, thanks, Gil. Really appreciate it, man.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. And then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scorers and threes drained. And you can even use your knowledge of the NHL to help you win at FanDuel. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at an even bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA.